Harav YCD, welcome back to Yerushalmi Pesachim. We're holding at Perek Shvi Halacha Vav, which is page Nun Ches Amud Aleph. Okay, so Nitma Kahal. So if the whole community of those bringing Korban Pesach, or Rubai, or the majority of the community, were Tameh, or Shayikanim Tameh, the kind of Tameh, V'Hakal Tara, everyone else is Tara, Yasu B'Tumah, they do the Korban Pesach in a state of Tumah. Nitma Miot HaKahal. If only a minority of the community are tamei, then there are individuals, their korban does not push away the tumah. So Tahirin Aisin is Harishan, that the part-time people do Pesach the first time round, but Tamein Aisin is Hasheni, and those who are tamei will keep it a month later. Now it sounds like you're allowed to bring a korban Pesach with tumah only if the majority of the community of Klal Yisrael are tamei, and even like one tribe, majority of one tribe, or even 7 tribes, which is like majority of 12, but if let's say they are small tribes and their number is not equal to the numbers majority, then the Torah people would keep the first Pesach and the Tamei ones would keep the second Pesach. So Man Tana, who is the Tana who holds that it's brought B'tumah only if it's Rov, you've got the majority of all the Jewish people. We're not looking at majority of one tribe, we're not looking at majority of number of tribes, we're looking at majority in numbers of the Jewish people. So who is this Tana? It's Rameah. The Tanya Rameah, he machzis Kol Haloshon. The same din applies if half the number of the tribes, that's 6 tribes, did a sin, following a mistake of the Sanhedrin. He machzis Kol Shevet v'Shevet. The same din applies if half the people from the people of each tribe of the 12 Shvatim sinned and followed the mistake of the Beis Din. In both situations, they don't bring a Payal Amdava, but a Vad Rov, because you don't bring it unless you have a Rov, the majority of all the Jewish people. So Reb Meir looks at the numbers of the Jewish people. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, if it was not more than Chatzi Kol Shevet v'Shevet, if it was not more than half, then they don't bring a Payal Amdava, but a Vad Rov. But in a situation where you don't even have one tribe, you're not going to bring a par unless you got a million of the sinners is equal to Rov Yisrael. Now, basically, half of the number of each tribe is half of all the people. But if it was Shvatim Shalemim, if whole tribe sinned, right, then not only that tribe brings a par Dava, even though it's not majority of the Jewish people, but one tribe, according to Yehuda, causes all the other tribes to bring as well. One tribe will bring a korban for itself, even if one of the, none of them sinned. Basically, if one tribe brings it, then all the tribes are going to bring it, according to Yehuda. So now we'll look into the argument of Rameir and Yehuda. First of all, we'll talk about the machlokes between them. If one tribe who sinned brings a Payal Amdava. So it says Payal Amdava, it says if all the Jewish people sin, V'nei Amdava me'enei hakal, the pasuk says. So Rameir says Kol Hashvatim Kurin Kahal. All the tribes together are called Kahal, not each tribe on its own. So you don't bring a korban unless you got the Rov from all the Jewish people. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, even Kol Shevet v'Shevet Kahal. Each tribe in its own right is called Kahal. So you bring a korban even if one tribe sinned. Now this machlokes was said as far as the din of doing Pesach b'tumah, right, which is Hutra, the Tumas Kal B'Tzibor. So according to Rameir, you'll bring a Pesach b'tumah if majority of people have sinned. And according to Yehuda, even if one tribe is Tameh, all the people are going to bring b'tumah. So Mishnah, which brings Pesach b'tumah only in most of the community, that is Rameir. Now, okay. Now, you got Machlokes Tanaim as well, but bringing a Payal Amdava, okay, it comes from Hurias, right? But most of you bring Rameir there, we bring Rabbi Yehuda. There's also Rav Shimon brought over there. But he says you might bring 13 parim, 1 par for each tribe and 1 for the Beis Din. So we brought Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda. Now we're going to bring Rabbi Shimon. As to Rabbi Yehuda, the view of Rabbi Yehuda fits in a bit like Rav Shimon. So according to Rav Shimon Amar, he said each tribe is called a Kahal. Kol Shevet Shevet Kari Kahal. Ken Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Kol Shevet Shevet Kari Kahal. He also says each tribe is called a Kahal. So they both argue on Rameir, who says that all the Jewish people are called Kahal. So what's the difference between them? Nothing but they argue in the din of Greira. So if a tribe has not sinned, does it have to follow a tribe that has sinned? Or do they also have to bring a par? So Rav Shimon says, one tribe doesn't cause the others to bring. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, Shevet Echad Ger Kol Hashvatim. One tribe causes all the others to bring. Now, if we go to Rabbi Yehuda, Shevet Echad Ger Kol Hashvatim, one tribe can cause all the others to bring, but Maida, he agrees that when is it that you bring, all the rest of the Shvatim, providing the mistake that came about from the Psak came from the Beis Din Hagadol in Lishkas Hagazis in the Beis Hamikdash. If it came from a little tribe based in their little provincial town, and the tribe followed them, then that Shevet has to bring a par, but it doesn't lead all the others. It's only if it came from the big based in Yerushalmi. The reason of this Tana, who says it has to come from the big based in, is based on the pasuk where it says you'll do the following. You'll follow the based in what they tell you. From the place that Hashem will choose. Right? That's the place that the based in Agalon in the based in Mikdash. Okay. Now the Gemara brings a Machlekes Yehuda and Shimon. So we brought Machlekes and the Sanhedrin making a mistake, and if one tribe causes all the rest to bring or not. What's the source for the view of Rabbi Yehuda that one tribe causes the rest to obligate them to bring a par? It says with carbon tibur v'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisrael. Now, it doesn't say kol ha'eda chatas. Not everyone sinned, but it says kol ha'eda. Everyone needs forgiveness, right? So all the Eda need forgiveness in every situation, even if one of the tribes sinned. Now, what was the reason for Rav Shimon? One tribe doesn't cause the rest. He says, Ki lechal ha'am bishgaga. It sounds like when it says Kol Hadas B'nei Yisrael, that's only when do they need forgiveness? When all the people sin, not when one tribe sinned. Now, what does Rav Shimon do with Rav Yehuda's pasuk? How is he going to explain that? Parat, he says, you know why? To exclude women and children. They're not included in Hadas B'nei Yisrael. How would he explain Rav Shimon's pasuk? Ki l'chala all the people. Prat to exclude a case where an action was done, but initially by intention. But sofa bishgaga, in the end of the avera was a mistake, and they don't bring a carbon. Right? When they have to bring a carbon, if there was shogeg from beginning to end. But if they were mazid in the beginning, and then based in paskin that is permitted, and they follow the based in psak, they don't bring a pahalam dava in such a case. Okay, Rav Abad, B'Shem Rabbi Yom Levi, Kraya Mesayel Amadama. The pasuk is a support for the one who holds Kol Shevet V'Shevet Kahal. Every tribe in his own right is called a kahal, because after Yaakov Avinu, he had 10 children. Hashem said, "Goy kahal goyim yemimeka." You're still going to have goy kahal goyim. V'adayin, now who is still going to be born? Lo nolad Binyamin. Binyamin was still going to be born. So kahal goyim is a reference to Binyamin. So one tribe can be called a kahal. Arachir Baba, Kishem Shein Chalkin Kam. So you got Yehuda and Rav Shimon arguing here with Pahalam Dava. Kachem Chalkin B'Tuba. They also argue about a Korban Pesach being brought in a state of impurity. So Rav Shimon holds one tribe can be Chai Pahalam Dava, but it doesn't bring all the others to follow on. And he holds one tribe can bring a Korban Pesach B'Tuba if the majority of that tribe are Tameh. But it doesn't bring all the others to bring their Korban Pesach B'Tuba. They have to bring it in a state of purity. So Rav Shimon holds one tribe can be called a kahal. So if the whole tribe are tameh, they don't wait for another month. No, they bring it now, in the right time. But that tribe is not a majority of the Jewish people, so it doesn't lead on to everyone else. Everyone else still has to bring it in the state of purity. Right? Rabbi Yehuda holds one tribe who has to pay a pahalam dava is a kahal. Everyone else has to follow. So similarly, if one tribe are tameh, not only they bring a Korban Pesach in a state of impurity, but everyone brings a Korban Pesach in a state of impurity. Just like that tribe. Okay? As if everyone is Tameh now. And he says here, as if the rest of the Kahal are all together. So even if one tribe is Tameh, it's as if all the Jewish people are half Tahar, half Tameh, and Rabbi Yehuda holds half of the community do the Pesach B'Tumah, the other half don't do it b'tara in a separate group. They all just bring the Korban Pesach in the state of tumah. The Tali, we learned to the price. If they were half tahar, half tameh. Now tahar and isin is harishon, The Tahar people keep it first month, and the Tamei ones the next month. That is Rav Meir's view. To Rav Meir. Rav Shimon, it should be. Rav Shimon said, the Tahar ones can bring it for themselves, but they do it b'tumah, they do it b'tara. They said back to Rav Shimon, you can't have half-half, and either everyone does it in a state of tara, if the majority are tahar, everyone does the state of tumah. Now, Manu, who is this Amrulai? It says they said to him, who is this Amrulai? It says, Kurb Yehuda. It fits in like Yehuda. It's an Ilan Tama. We've learned Timanachas. Nitmez Achas Menachalas. Now remember, you have the 2 loaves on Shavuos. If one of the loaves is Tameh, Acham and Astorim, or let's say 6 of the Lechem Apanim. Remember, there's 12 Lechem Apanim, maybe 1 Seder of them, or 2, whatever. Rabbi Yehuda, he said, Shneim, both of the 2 loaves of Shavuos, yes, to the base of Sefer, they have to be burned. She'ein Korban Sibur Chaluk. You can't divide the 2 loaves. You can't have one eaten and one kosher and one possible. You can't have all that. So everything's possible. The Chachamim say, Hatamei B'tumah. He says the Tamei ones have to stay in their states of tumah and they have to be burnt. But Hatar Yacham, and the Tara one can be eaten. So Yehuda holds you can't have a common Sibur split in half. And that's like the previous brisa, the Amrulai. You can't have a common Pesach split in half, right? So that opinion, that's like Rabbi Yehuda. He argues on the view of Rav Shimon, who holds you can have 2 groups doing things differently. Now the machlokes view of Rav Shimon about common Pesach fits in with Payal Amdava. Rabbi Yehuda said with Payal Amdava, you can't break down the community with Pesach. If one do it with Tumah, everyone joins in. If one tribe has to bring Payal Amdava, all the tribes have to bring. And according to Rav Shimon, we can divide it up. One part doing B'tumah, one doing B'tara. Each tribe, you have to bring Payal Amdava, the other tribes don't. Rabbi Yosef and he said no. Mani Amrullah, who is the Amrullah who spoke to Rav Shimon? It's Chachamim, is another opinion. It's Chachamim, Shehein Keshitas Rabbi Yehuda. They're like Rabbi Yehuda in some respect. So they agree that you can't have a common sibur broken down, but they argue about common Pesach. What do you do where half, you hear that, half is Tahar, half is Tameh. So Rabbi Yehuda holds, in this situation, the whole common sibur bring the common Pesach in a state of impurity. But the Chachamim of Amrullah, they hold, no. You can't have the tzibur bringing a common Pesach in a state of impurity. You hear that? It's half-half. So you can't say everyone brings in impurity. What do you do when it's half-half? What do you do? Do you treat the half like Kurayv, like a majority, or do you treat it like a miut, like a minority? In Tema Kamiut, if you treat it like a minority, then Hatahirim, the ones who are Tahar, who are now like a miut, Enonaisin, Esarishan, they're not going to bring it first time round, they'll push it for the second month, because Pesach Rishon is going to be a kahal, not individuals. And if half the tzibur are not like majority, then they're like individuals. So they can't bring it first time round. In Tema Kurayv, if you're going to say they're treated as majority, then Atmein, the Tameh ones, Enonaisin, Esasheni, the Tameh ones can't bring the second one. They have to do the first one in a state of impurity. So how's it going to work? Rabbi Yosef said, we never said a minority who are Torah cannot bring the Rishon, the first one. And we never said Rov Tamein, majority who are Tameh, Ein and can't bring the second one. All we said is like this. Rov Tamein, majority who are Tameh, don't let them wait for next month. Tumah can be pushed away for a majority. You hear that? So majority who are Tameh, they don't have to wait. Okay? If the Rav is Tameh choose to wait and do it next month, they're allowed to do so. So even you're going to say like half-half, like each half is like a majority, well that half who is Tameh are allowed to wait. Right? And if the Mir Tatar, they can bring it first month, the first time. So Machsa, if you treat each half as minority, the half that is Tahar are allowed to bring in the first time. And that's the understanding of Rameir, whether the half are considered like a majority or like a minority, whatever happens, the half who are Tahar are allowed to bring it in the first month, and the half who are Tameh can bring it next month. Now, Ardate da Amrullah. According to those Chachamim who spoke to Rav Shimon, how do you treat half by half? What do you do? Now they must agree half of a kahal is called a majority, but not like Rav Shimon. They hold you can't start dividing between Tahor people and Tameh people. So if the ones who are Tameh are like a majority, so they can't wait till next month, they have to bring it now. But if the half who are Tahor are like a majority, they can't join to the Tameh group to make the Pesach B'tumah. If the Tahor and the Tameh can't bring a Kam Pesach separately, so what do? So Rabbi B'Shem Rav, Metame Nechab L'Sheretz says, you know what we do? We will intentionally defile one of the Tahor people with an insect. And that way you've got a Rov who are Tameh. Not dead people Tameh, but at least an insect Tameh, a dead sheretz. And then the minority can join to bring it in a state of Tumah. Shmuel said, Mashachinos, we send one of the Tahor people away. The Derech Rechaika. He's far away, he can't bring his potter from bringing a Kom Pesach if he's out of the way. Ask your commander, that fits in like the one who says, Yachid Machria ala Tumah, an individual who is Tameh can show weight on the impurity and make the numbers into majority. But however, Commander Amar Ena Yachid Machri ala Tumah, if you hold an individual can't, then Meshalchin Shnai, we have to send two people away, and that makes you a majority now. So their numbers will be taken away from the calculation because they're not in the area. The Rav, now to understand Rav, that one of the Torah people we get a sheretz, and he makes the majority, it's like his view of Rabbi Lazar. Commander Rabbi Lazar, just like he says, Hayatzibu Magai Nevelos, people who touch Nevela, or Magai Shratzim, they touch Shratzim, Aisin, they can bring Kom Pesach B'tumah in a state of impurity. As if it was made from Tameh Mace, the same thing with sheretz. Now, although Rabbi Lazar equates Tameh of a sheretz, or Nevela, with dead body Tumah, so if the majority are allowed to do Kom Pesach B'tumah, but however, this is providing she'ein shamayim litzvah. There's no water to go in the mikveh and purify oneself when the sun sets, and therefore they can't eat their Kom Pesach at night. And yesh shamayim litzvah. If there's water to go in the mikveh, ein anaisin b'tumah. They don't bring in a state of impurity. They have to send their Kom Pesach through shliach and go in the mikveh, and then they can eat from it that night. You hear that? So if they can find a way to become tahor, they're expected to do so. Now we mentioned two things where you bring Kom Pesach B'tumah, right? When the majority of the tibur, or all of them, or majority are tameh, or where the kainim are tameh, are Rabbi Lazar. Haba B'tumas Kli Shares. So if most of the tibur are tahor and the kainim are tahor, but the vessels they're using are tameh, and also Haba B'tumas Yadayim, the hands of the kainim who are doing the avodah are tameh, or Haba B'tumas Sakinin, the knives of the Shrita Tameh. That's the state where the Kom Pesach is brought in a state of impurity. Right, although the Kelim are Tameh, they're only Matameh, the meat of the Karbonas, not the people who are bringing them. But these Karbonas are like Boim B'tumah. So the people of Tameh Tumas Aguf are allowed to eat from these Karbonas. They're considered coming in a state of impurity. Now, although, if most of the Tibur are Tameh Tumas Mace, you can bring a Kom Pesach B'tumah. Nevertheless, if the Rov, let's say, imagine the majority of people have got Tumah of Ziva, which is a different type of Tumah, then they can't bring Kom Pesach B'tumah. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about now. A Tumah, a different type of Tumah. We find Pesach is pushed away for Tumas Mace. We don't find other Ziva, other Tumah. So Hayat Zibur, imagine you have a community divided in three groups. Shlish Zavin, a third of them are Zav. Shlish Tamein, and third are Tamei Tumas Mace. Shlish Tahirin, and a third are Tahor. Ramana V'Shem Chizkiah, the Zavin or Tamein, Rabin ala Tahirin. The Zavim are included with the Tamei ones, that makes it a majority against the Tahir minority, V'Aisin B'tumah, and they keep the Tamei Mason become Pesach in a state of impurity. And the Tahir ones can join up. The Zavin ain't an Aisin, but the Zavin, they can't become Pesach, not the Rishon, Lois Rishon, Lois Sheni, not the first one, not the second one. Now, Chizkiah takes on that even though the Zavim don't join with the Tibur to bring Kom B'tumah, they join with the Tamei Mason to make a Rov of Tamei. So that's why we bring the Kom Pesach now. You understand? In a state of impurity, because they add up to the majority. Arav Zaira, Hazav, He says the Zav, how do we consider him? We treat him like he's always doesn't listen to the Beis Din. He never listens to the Beis Din. And just like we say, someone who just follows his own and doesn't listen to the Beis Din. And now, it doesn't add on to the numbers and doesn't take away from the numbers about so here as well we come Pesach, the Zav, is not included with the Tameh ones to create a majority there. He's not included with the Tahar ones to create a majority there. So he's saying, this opinion Rav Zohar is saying, ignore him. Someone who's a Zav is not in the Tameh crowd, is not in the Tahar crowd. You completely ignore him. Right? He argues on Chizkiah, who said the Zavim join up with the Tameh ones. A group eating Kol Pesach, and one was Tameh, and we don't know who is the one who's Tameh. Right? They stood, and someone said, I saw one of you got Tameh with a sheretz, but I don't know which one. Then all the groups, they all have to bring Kol Pesach Sheni. Because at the time of the avodah, the first one, it's a suffix Tameh. So they can't bring Pesach Rishon, they can't sprinkle the blood for them, they all push to next month. If the whole community, one is Tameh, we don't know who, Yasu, but Tumah, they can bring it in a state of impurity. Tani Rabosha learned a brayta. He says, Tzibur is Tameh with one of you don't know who, Yasu Kisveikan. They should treat it like a suffix Tumah. Lai Mistabra Delai. Now surely it makes more sense, Kadodatani like Rabosha learned, and only those who have a suffix Tumah can do a Kol Pesach. Those who are definitely Tameh can't join up. And the reason is Shlolana Shliyachid Kares. The whole idea is that individual is definitely Tameh, shouldn't be punished with Kares because he went and ate from Kol Pesach B'Tumah. So therefore he can't join in, you see? Those who are definitely Tameh are forbidden to join up. He's Tameh, he won't get Kares because he's eaten from the Kol Pesach, the state of Tumah. Okay. So now, we spoke about where, two matters which talk about the majority of the Jewish people. We spoke about Kol Pesach, we spoke about Pahel Amdava, what's called a majority. Rav Yirmiyah Rish Lakish, Laharaya. As far as the chiyuv of the community, they followed the psak of the Beis Din, and it was a mistake. We look at the majority of those dwelling within the land. We don't look at those living abroad. To forget the numbers, to work out is the majority, we look at who's living in the land. L'tumah, however, for doing a Kol Pesach in a state of impurity, we look at the majority coming into the Azara. Right? For doing Kol Pesach B'Tumah. We bring the Kol Pesach B'Tumah, even though amongst the west of the country, there are many more Tahor people. We look at who's come in, and we see, are the majority Tameh or not? Now, what do you mean the majority of those coming in? Does it mean the first group? The first three groups? There were three groups. What are we counting? Maybe only the first group. You don't follow every different group. You only follow the first group. When they're still outside, before they're divided into groups, they work out to look at the Merov. And if the Rov are Tameh, they're divided in three groups, and each group does it B'Tumah. And if the Rov are Tahor, then the Tahorim are divided into three groups, and they bring the Kol Pesach on the state of Tahara. Rishon ben Levi said, as far as the chiyuv of the tzibur, he's saying this din, we're looking at the din of the tzibur for the community here, that they're following psak of the Beis Din, Hilchu, they're following the majority of the dwellers, Milavai Hamas, which is the northern border, and Nachal Mitzrayim until the southern border. The reason Rishon ben Levi from the pasuk, he made at this time Sachag, and all the Jewish people. It says the whole community from Levi Hamas to Nachal Mitzrayim, and that's why did he have to say where they're from Hamas to Nachal Mitzrayim? So for here we learn those people within that border, then they're called Kahal. The people beyond that are not called kahal. By Payal Amdava, the Torah mentions the word hakahal. And the passing of Malachim tells me it's those within the borders. So the din Payal Amdava is when the most of the community are within the borders. And then, okay. Halacha Zayin. Right, what about an individual's Korban Pesach? Pesach Shenizrak Damai, an individual is brought b'tumah. Basically, the blood was sprinkled, and then we find out either the meat or the blood was tamei at the time of sprinkling. But we went and brought it under all ideas that everything was fine, and then we find out it was tamei. Atzitz meratzeh. The tzitz provides an appeasement. He doesn't have to bring it again. But if we find out after sprinkling, shenitma tumas haguf, that the person was tamei, ein hatzitz meratzeh, the tzitz doesn't help. He has to bring it again. Because they said with the nazir, and I said Pesach, one brings God Pesach, tzitz meratzeh al tumas hadam. The tzitz is meratzeh if the korban blood was tamei, ve'ein tzitz meratzeh al tumas haguf, but not of the person of the owner. However, if he only finds out shenitzma, if he became tamei, let's say nazir or doing korban Pesach, but tumas hatzahim, the tumah of the depths, that's like a rabbinical tumah. You didn't know there was a grave, buried underneath 5 meters under him, right? You didn't know that. That's a rabbinical tumah, which no one ever knew about. Then the tzitz is meratzeh, the tzitz provides an appeasement on this tumah, and the korbanos are kosher. Okay. Ma'asnisa, now the Mishnah talking about a case, but shenitzma, let's say the blood was tameh, mishiyar l'tavira shakeli, after it's gone into the airspace of the kli shares for receiving the blood. And if this blood is sprinkled with tumah, the tzitz is meratzeh. Aval im nitzma atru malamalon, if the blood was tameh while it's still above the airspace of the keli, right, when it's falling from the animal's neck, before in the airspace of the keli, then when the Kohen receives it in the keli, nasik and mekabel mayim, as if he's received water, not blood. Even if he sprinkles it, it doesn't help. Menayin the safek keva time. Now, where do we learn that a keva, which no one ever knew about, doesn't passel a nazir or korban pesach, right? This underground tumah. Rabbi Yaakov Barach Moshe Rabbanan, and it says someone who's tamei, he's on a far away, right? And lachem, ma lachem, just like that which is far away. Lachem means begalo, that you know. This is a derech, it's clear, it's visible. Afkal, so all the cases, davar begala, is something which is visible, as opposed to an underground burial. Yasa keva tahayim she'ena begala. No one knew about this. You didn't know about it. You're not sprinkling. You find out later. Ad kadul, that's all very well. I say Pesach, I understand, but nazir minayin. Rabbi Yechon Hashem Rabbi said Chiyam was made salav. When the person dies on him, mash alav, it means on him. He knows about it. Shubagala afkal. So also everything davar shubagala yatsa keva time as opposed to an underground burial. She'enam begaloi was not clearly visible. So Nazir is tamei tuas atzahayim. He finishes his naziris. He brings his korban, and then he finds out he's tamei from an underground burial. His korban is accepted. He's finished his naziris. He doesn't have to keep it again. Tzivur shenitzma b'safek time. A community have got this rabbinical tumah. Ma'al shiratze all of us. It doesn't sit provide a forgiveness for them. Kavachayim. Of course it should, because ma'im liyachid for an individual shurata kaichai. You reduce his strength. But Tumah Yadua, we push him to Pesach Sheni with proper Tumah. Your Tamei dead body, go wait a month. Nevertheless, Yepisa Kaicha, we emboldened him. Is that a long word for you, Rabbi Say? We emboldened him and strengthened him, but Safek Kevat home. In situation of underground Tumah, we didn't push him to Pesach Sheni, we allowed him to keep Pesach Rishon. So Tzibur, a community, Shepisas Kaicha Shal Tumah Yadua, if there's known Tumah, right, we allow them to bring in a state of tumah, all of them, the first month, and can eat it. How much more so we should strengthen them for safek kevatahim if there's safek tumah of an underground tumah. We will allow them to eat their korban Pesach. Right? An individual tumah yado will passel him, but tahim does not. A tzibur, they are stronger. A tzibur who are tameh are not possible from bringing Pesach Rishon. They're mutzah with eating Pesach brought B'tumah. So once you sprinkle the blood, you find out they're all tamei, tumas time, the tzitz will provide a forgiveness, they don't have to bring it again. But then the Gemara says, Kal Shata Mekel, that leniency you have, B'yachid, you're machshir a carbon because of the heter tumas time. That's the reason, Chad Machmir B'tzibur. That's the reason why you should be strict in the case of tzibur. We should passel them for eat the carbon if you find out that tamei tumas time. So Gemara explains, Kal Shata Mekel B'yachid, the leniency you're lenient with tumas time of an individual is she'im, if he's got tumas time before sprinkling, fair enough. When it's vadalai he only finds out after sprinkling. Yes, we treat it as if you find out now. As if you're tamei just now after sprinkling the blood, not before. We treat it, look, you only find out now, we treat it as if you become tamei now. And that way you don't get pushed for Pesach Sheni, you fulfill your duty with a Korban Pesach. The first one. Right? And this din is Tusahim. We didn't know about this Tumah. So you're tired as far as Nazir, as far as Pesach, until you find out about the Tumah. As if you're Tameh when you find out. Right? So if someone went above at Kevat Tahim before he brings his Korban Pesach, after Zrika it comes out there was a grave there, then as far as carbon, we treat it as if he's tamei now after sprinkling. So the carbon's kosher. Because the time when we brought it, he's considered tahor, he can bring his carbon. But he can't eat it because now he's tamei. And since he's fulfilled his duty with Korban Pesach, he doesn't have to bring it again next month. As machmir ala b'tzibur. So for this reason, we're machmir with the tzibur, because the din of tumas tahim, she'im, if a tzibur are tamei, tumas tahim, before the sprinkling of the blood. But nisvadolai, they only find out after the sprinkling of the blood, it's treated as if they're only tamei. If we only find out later, as if we were tamei later. You understand? As if they're tamei after sprinkling and not beforehand. In order that we're going to stop them from eating the meat of the korbanos. So basically, if the tzibur are tamei, and they find out about it before they can bring the Korban Pesach, then fair enough, we'll push away the tumah, they can bring a carbon and eat it in its impurity. If they were brought their carbon batara, you hear that, in a state of purity, but they're tamei after bringing it, but before eating it, they can't eat it. The heter tumah b'tzibur is only when you're bringing Korban Pesach b'tumah and you're not pushing it to Pesach Sheni. If it's a time when the carbon is done b'tahara and it's kosher, then a tamei person can't eat it. So since as far as tumas hatahim, they are treated as if they're tamei now. We only find out now. So as if they're tamei now. So now it comes out they brought the Korban Pesach in a state of tahara, and therefore they are tamei later on, and therefore they're not allowed to eat it. You follow? That we only find out now it's as if they became tamei now, but they brought it in a state of purity. So therefore they can't now eat it in a state of impurity. Kal Shata Mekel. So now after the Gemara has brought the heter of tumas hatahim and it leaves lidei a chumrah with tumah b'tzibur, it brings another source of the heter of tumas hatahim leading to a chumrah. Kal Shata Mekel. The kula you're lenient with tumas hatahim but nazir tahar, with a nazir tahar, that is itself not machmir, but nazir tamei is strict with a nazir who's tamei. Let's see. Kal Shat Mekel b'nazir tahar, that which you're lenient with the nazir tahar, she'im, if he's tamei tumas hatahim before sprinkling, right, still a nazir, but you find out, nisvadolai la'achas rika, you find out after sprinkling that when your nazirus finishes, yasa kamisha nitzma la'achas rika, as if you only became tamei later on after sprinkling. Shalei yavi korban tumah, he doesn't need to bring a korban tumah of a nazir, because the heter tumas hatahim causes we treat him as if the tumah came after you find out. So if he brought his carbon, he's finished the nazirus. You find out later his tamei tumas hatahim before he's brought the carbon, then his nazirus is finished. His carbon's kasher. At machmeh, and therefore we should be strict, but nazir tamei. The same din of nazir tamei. The same din of tumas hatahim tells me she'im, that what? If he's tamei and then he's tired from his tumah, and then he becomes tamei tumas hatahim before sprinkling the blood, but nisvadallah, he only finds out that he's tamei la'achas rika after sprinkling. Yes, that we treat it kamisha nitzma as if he was tamei and brought his carbon, and then chazar nitzma became tamei again. In this situation, maybe carbon tumah l'chol echad v'echad. He has to bring for every tumah a separate carbon. Ka'adada tana, like that which we learned in Gemara Nazir. Nitma v'chazva nitma. You came tamei twice. Maybe carbon tumah l'chol echad v'echad. Each tumah needs its own carbon. So if he's tamei and he becomes tamei again before he brought his carbon, then one carbon will be enough. But he became tamei after he's brought his carbon. He has to bring a separate carbon for each one. Right? In this situation, he became tamei before he brought his carbon. And since the tumah wasn't well known, the tumah at the time is like we're treating it as if he's only tamei after he finds out. And that's after he brought the carbon. And that requires him, therefore, his machmir, it obligates him to bring another carbon. On each tumah, he'll need to bring a separate carbon. Okay. Oived shel Pesach. One who brings a carbon Pesach, that's the Cohen. And he finds out after he's done it that he was tamei tumas atayim. Mashi Yuratz Olav as the sitz. Does the sitz provide a kapara for the Kohen who's only find out now? So we can say kavachomer. Ma im abalim shorata koichan bezaken v'chayla. Now the owners, we take away their power. They can't eat Korban Pesach if they're old or sick. They can't eat Korban Pesach. Then we can't bring their Korban Pesach. And yet yipis koichan b'safek kevatayim. We strengthen them with this underground tumah. Right? If we only find out after they brought their carbon, the sitz is maratzeh, we'll allow their carbon. So therefore, a Kohen who is Oved, a Kohen doing the avodah, shepisa koichan, b'zaken avachayla, we allow a Kohen who's old and sick to do avodah. Therefore, enadin, how much more so shetiyape koichan? We will strengthen his hand. B'safek kevat home. If we find out the Kohen might have been on top of an underground grave, we should be lenient, and we'll say if he's tamei with that, the sitz will be maratzeh. And the Gemara says, no, lie. It's all very well we strengthen the owners. Anyone who's tamei any tumah the whole year can bring karbonos. So basically, just through a shliach, as opposed to toma ba'over, as opposed to kohen doing the avodah. But where here his kayach, he's got tumas to home. We weaken his kayach. The kohen who's tamei any tumah is possible from even bringing a carbon of an individual. Therefore, we are not going to accept him to do the avodah the rest of the year. Then we're going to stop him from being involved in the tumas time of tamei meis, and therefore the sitz will not help in the situation of Korban Pesach. So although he's greater, more than the koach of Bala Korban to bring these karbonos when he's old or sick, but the Bala Korban is greater than the Kohen, but for us the tumah is itself. Because if the Bala Korban is tamei, he can send the korban through a shliach. Right? The Kohen who's tamei can't have any share in the avodah. So maybe also here, if I was tumas atahim, the koach of a Bala Korban is greater than the Kohen. So the suffix tumas atahim, is it permitted for a Kohen, is not so clear cut. My kudu. So what are we going to discuss? What's the halacha then? Is the sitz meratzeh for a Kohen doing the avodah when he's got tamei tumas atahim? Rav Nachman Hashem Ramana, it says a person who's away, far away, lachem, only as someone who's tamei the mace, we know he's pushed to Pesach Sheni, and not tumas atahim, which is not known. Right? Since it says lachem, ridashen bein lai, whether it's for the Bala Korban, this heter is for Bala bein lai, bein la'aved shalai, or one who does the avodah for him, which is the Kohen. If after the Gemara of the avodah we find out it was tamei tumas atahim, the sitz is meratzeh on the Korban. Okay, I think we will stop here. The sugya carries on, but it's a long sugya, so we'll carry on another day.